Thank you, Cathaoirleach. Minister, the Government has promised to deliver 3 maternity hospitals in the Greater Dublin area. The Holles Street Hospital is meant to move to the St Vincent site, the Coombe Hospital is meant to move to the St James's site, and the Rotunda is meant to move to the Connolly site. My question is if you can provide an update as to what progress has been made and when we're going to see these hospitals in their new sites and up and running. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Antara.
Thank you very much, I want to thank Deputy Donnelly for his question in this regard. In line with best international practice, it is government policy, and I think policy of the Oireachtas as well, as set out in the National Maternity Strategy, that standalone maternity hospitals will be co-located with acute adult hospitals. We shouldn't have standalone maternity hospitals anymore. Project Ireland 2040, our capital plan, provides 10.9 billion for health capital developments across the country, including funding to relocate these hospitals. The Government is fully committed to the maternity hospital projects. There are obviously 4 projects. The new maternity hospital at St Vincent's University Hospital campus will be the first of these. The transfer of the Coombe Women and Infants University Hospital, the Rotunda Hospital and the Limerick Maternity Hospital will also follow. The relocation of the National Maternity Hospital at Holles Street to the St Vincent's University Hospital campus is progressing. A number of enabling work contracts in relation to the pharmacy block and the extension of the car park are in progress and are due to be completed next year. Let me be very clear, though, the tender documents for the maternity hospital will not issue until such a time as a legal framework to protect the state's significant investment has been agreed. And I've heard much commentary on this in recent days, but to be very clear, that is the Government's position. We will not press go on the full project until all of the outstanding issues are resolved. The relocation of the Rotunda Hospital to the Connolly campus is one of our key infrastructure projects to be funded. It's important that we carefully plan all projects to meet population health needs and to achieve value for money, and this work is ongoing. I have engaged with the Master of the Rotunda, the RCSI Hospital Group and the HSC in relation to the relocation of the Rotunda to Connolly, including meeting with these parties in July of this year. A site for the proposed maternity hospital is also identified in the St James's campus master plan, and the new children's hospital design has allowed for the required operational links and clinical adjacencies with both maternity and adult hospitals to be provided. Tri-location for the Coombe will facilitate the transfer of critically ill mothers from the maternity hospital to St James's. Project briefs will be progressed in 2020 for the relocation of the Rotunda, the Coombe and Limerick to acute hospital campuses. And I want to acknowledge this is something Deputy Donnelly did call for in the capital plan. We have now provided funding for the project briefs to be progressed for each of these projects in 2020. Obviously, all our maternity hospital projects are required to progress through a number of approval stages in line with the Public Spending Code, which includes appraisal, planning, design and tender before a firm timeline or funding requirement can be established.
Thank you, Minister. Just to be clear, what I asked for was for funding for the project briefs to be progressed this year, but next year is better than not happening. Minister, I just want to go through these one at a time. So, Holles Street is meant to have started by now. That's my understanding. That was the original plan. You, fairly or unfairly, have been blamed for part of the delay by a Chief Justice at an IHCA conference in Galway, that there was some spat going on between you and the hospital and that you were blamed, fairly or unfairly. But it hasn't happened, and the car park isn't of much use to the patients. The Coombe we were promised would happen at the same time as the Children's Hospital by the Taoiseach when he had your job. And that hasn't happened. And I, as I'm sure you are talking to the clinicians involved, and the conditions are not safe. And Rotunda is on a promise into the future, that at some point in the far distant future they'll end up on the Connolly site. But before that even happens, there has to be an adult hospital out there, a Model 4 hospital out there. And in that context, they have repeatedly asked for pretty modest funding to upgrade the facilities they have. So can I ask you 3 direct questions? Do you agree that the current conditions in all 3 of these hospitals are unacceptable for mothers, for babies and for clinicians? Do you accept that the delays that are going on are unacceptable and that these are delays? It's not just a question of this is all proceeding according to plan, that they have been delayed. And most importantly, the only question that really matters is, do you have a time, even a year, for when each of these hospitals, when the building will begin and much more importantly, when they will actually open? Thank you.
So I think the phrase fairly or unfairly is a pretty loaded phrase, because either you think the accusation is fair or you think it's unfair. Let me be very clear. Well, I think it's very fair as Minister for Health, and I hope if you were in this position you'd adopt this approach as well, that we wouldn't press go on the building of the new National Maternity Hospital at the St Vincent's campus until all of the issues, including the issue of the religious orders leaving, and all of the governance issues are resolved and the hospital is in public ownership. I believe all of that can be achieved. I believe there's been a lot of misinformation and scaremongering in that regard, but I believe all of it can be achieved. But my position is very clear in that regard. That's not delaying the project, though, because the enabling works are ongoing now. The pharmacy and the car park, both of which will benefit our acute adult hospital anyway. Those works are due to be completed in 2020, at which stage you would then go to tender for the National Maternity Hospital proper. We'll only press go on that tender after a government decision, and once all of the commitments, and I set out 3 very clear commitments, have been met. But it is possible that that hospital could go to construction late in 2020, subject to those conditions being made. In relation to the Coombe, while you are correct that it was always, I'm going to run out of time, but whilst you are correct that it was always intended to proceed with the hospital alongside the Children's Hospital, that was never from a construction point of view. You have to build the Children's Hospital first and then the Coombe. But you are right, and I've agreed with you on this, you are right, we should be preparing to go ahead with the construction of the Coombe. That's why the project brief will be done. And very finally, Cathaoirleach, in relation to the Rotunda, I do agree that there is a need to listen to Professor Malone in relation to the interim works that should be done. I've asked Professor Malone and the HSE to come up with an agreed project, what could be done in the interim. I believe that's almost finalised, and I'm looking forward to them coming in to see me in the coming weeks in that regard.
And I would remind members that we keep an eye on the time.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister. Yeah, look, the promise on the Coombe, the exact wording from the Taoiseach was it would happen in parallel. Now, if you tell me Building A is going to be progressed in parallel with Building B, to me that suggests that, you know, bricks are going up at the same time. I think that's pretty reasonable. Minister, I'd like to come back again just to the core question, because we can go back and forth with the detail and that's fine. But ultimately, the only question that really matters to mothers and indeed fathers and to the babies and to the staff is when. Right? So you must have a project plan for each of these. So can I ask you, do you have, and if so, will you share the date for when you are saying the new hospital will be open on the St Vincent site? When will the Coombe be reopened on the James's site? And when will the Rotunda be reopened on the Connolly site? Ultimately, that's all that matters. And then finally, just, will you commit to providing the start of that funding in next year's budget, in the service plan for the Rotunda? Because as the Master said, as we both know, that it's only a matter of time before a baby dies based on the overcrowding that they're dealing with. Thank you, Chair.
It's a very Dublin-centric question, because you keep on leaving out poor old Limerick. I'm sure Deputy O'D wouldn't be happy with that. We do intend to co-locate the 4 maternity hospitals, including the one in Limerick. In relation to answer your question bluntly, Holles Street is first in the queue. That's our intention. I hope, subject to the criteria that I've set out being met by all involved, I hope construction can begin on that towards the end of 2020. In relation to the Coombe, in relation to, obviously, if we need to go to tender, and if I start giving out dates on the floor of the Dáil in relation to the tender process and the construction project, in a couple of years' time, you'll come back and say, you said this, you said that. We need to actually allow that tender process to go forward. I think that's fair. The Coombe will go to construction, but when the Children's Hospital is finished. But what we will do in the meantime is proceed with all of the planning and development that needs to be done in that regard. And the Rotunda, my priority now, whilst obviously committed to the bigger move, my priority now is to see how we can help the Master with the interim works that do need to be carried out. I do wish to see funding provided for this. I do need to meet Professor Malone and the HSE on this in the coming weeks. I've asked that they present to my department formally their agreed plan, and I will endeavour to respond positively to that.
Thank you, Minister.